Now that we've talked about simultaneous games, we can move on to sequential games. In a sequential game, we're going to have one player move first, and then another player moves. The way to solve sequential games is to really think backward. So we'll take an example that happened recently. For the final season of The Big Bang Theory, we had 5 original cast members, and then there were 2 additions, Bernadette and Amy. The 5 original cast members were scheduled to make $1 million per episode in the final season, and Amy and Bernadette were scheduled to make just $200,000 for each episode. The 5 members of the original cast got together and they decided, hey, maybe we should take a $100,000 pay cut and give that part of our pay to Amy and Bernadette, since they're a big part of the show now too. We can think about why did they do this, and if that was really the best strategy for them in this case. Okay? So let's take a look at that through the eyes of Penny. So here we can think in terms of Penny. All of her castmates have agreed to take a $100,000 pay cut, but Penny can still demand her $1 million per episode or take her pay cut. And then we need to think in terms of Amy. What would Amy do in each situation? Well, Amy can continue to work for Big Bang Theory, or she can find other work. In either scenario, whether Penny demands her $1 million or takes her pay cut, Amy has the same 2 potential outcomes. She can continue her work at Big Bang Theory or find other work. And now we can look at the payoffs of each of these outcomes. Here we have Penny demands her $1 million, and Amy continues to work at the Big Bang Theory. Penny will get $1 million per episode, and Amy will get $200,000. If Penny demands $1 million and Amy decides to go get other work, Penny will get $500,000, and Amy will get $300,000. If Penny decides to take her $100,000 pay cut, then Amy can continue at the Big Bang Theory, and Penny will get $900,000, and Amy would get $450,000. If Penny decides to take a pay cut and Amy decides to get other work, then Penny would get $500,000 per episode, and Amy would get $300,000 doing her other work. Okay? So, if we put ourselves in Penny's shoes, should she decide to demand her $1 million or take a $100,000 pay cut? If Penny demands $1 million, then Amy gets to decide if she wants to continue Big Bang Theory or to choose to go to other work. So, if you're Amy in this situation, we put you here as Amy, would you continue Big Bang Theory or go to other work? Do you want $200,000 or $300,000? Well, 300 is more than 200, so you would want to be here, which means that Penny would get $500,000. Now, if Penny decides to take her $100,000 pay cut, then Amy has the same 2 options: continue Big Bang Theory or find other work. And we can look over here at Amy's payouts. $450,000 is more than $300,000, so Amy is going to choose to take $450,000, and that leaves us with $900,000 for Penny. So Penny taking a $100,000 pay cut leads to Amy continuing to work at Big Bang Theory, and Penny gets $900,000 and Amy gets $450,000. So after Penny thinks backwards about what would Amy do, she realizes that Amy is going to be either down here and leave Penny with $500,000, or Amy is going to continue at the Big Bang Theory if she takes her pay cut, and that would leave Penny with $900,000. So what should Penny do in this case? Well, she's comparing $900,000 if she takes the pay cut to $500,000 if she demands her $1 million. So Penny would like to go here, take her pay cut, and that leaves Amy still working at the Big Bang Theory, and that leaves Penny down here with $900,000 and Amy with $450,000. So notice in that game, the first player has an advantage, and that's the case in most sequential games. But we still need to consider the first player has to consider the other player's payoffs when making the first move. Okay? So unlike the decision matrix, we now have a decision tree. And in the decision tree, the first player needs to consider what the other people are going to take to optimize what they should do in their first move. So that was a game where the first player has an advantage. But are there any games where the first mover does not have an advantage? Let's take another example here. My cousins wanted some cookies, but there was only one left, so I told them they would have to split the last cookie. Brody, the older one over here, is going to have to break the cookie in half, and Cruz is going to get to choose which piece he wants. Okay? So over here, what is Brody's optimal solution? Okay? How would a game theorist split this cookie? If you said A, 50-50, you are correct, right? Both the boys wanted the biggest cookie they could possibly get, so by making the older boy split the cookie, he doesn't get to pick the bigger half. The younger cousin gets to pick the bigger half that he wants. We've talked about a one-shot sequential game. Now let's talk about repeated sequential games. If you recognize this little boy over here on the right, that is me in high school, and this is my girlfriend from about 8th grade through junior year of high school. Every time we were together, I had a choice. I could be mature down here, or I could do something immature. Usually, I took the route on top. After I chose to either be mature or be immature, then it was Taylor's turn. Okay? And now if I was mature, then Taylor could choose to either be mature or be immature. And then it becomes my turn to act, right? So this is an example of a repeated game where Taylor and I could choose to either be mature or be immature. Usually, I chose to be immature, right? And that would lead to a different pay structure. Okay? Taylor could forgive me for being immature, and then it's my turn again to either be mature or be immature. Or we could fight about it and potentially break up, in which case I would be sad, and she would be free of this monster that she was dating. As I stated earlier, I usually like to take this route where I was immature, which could lead to this fight sad free, but the payout down here where she forgave me was a little higher for me because I got to be immature. So I usually went that route. And one time she told me I wasn't allowed to get a mohawk or she'd break up with me, and I told her that that was pretty immature, so I went and got a mohawk, and she went and broke up with me. The last thing I want to talk about is commitment strategy in sequential games. So for this example, we'll take a look at the Spanish coming to colonize Mexico. And the goal here, the Spanish want to get the land, and the Aztecs want to keep their land, so they're both fighting over the same land, but the Spanish are better armed. Okay? So here we have this game where the Spanish are landing, so the Aztecs are the first movers, and the Spanish and Aztecs can both choose to either fight or retreat and fight another day. Okay. So here, if we have this payoff matrix, the Aztecs have to think about what the Spanish are going to do, what their optimal strategy is in each case. So if the Aztecs choose to fight, the Spanish would choose to retreat, because minus 20 is more than minus 50. And if the Aztecs choose to retreat, then the Spanish would choose to fight, because 20 is more than minus 10. So they would gain 20 for the land that they gain and not have to fight. Whereas down here, if they retreat, then they lose 20 for humiliation, but they don't lose 50 because they would lose in the fight. Okay. So here we have underlined the solutions for each one. So the Aztecs would choose to fight, and the Spanish would choose to retreat, and this would be the outcome that we would get if the Aztecs had first mover advantage. But if you know about this history, Cortez was the Spanish general that landed there, and he chose to burn the boats that they sailed over from Spain, which committed his forces to one strategy of fighting. So if we look again at this matrix, then we see here retreat is no longer an option. So now the Aztecs have to choose between retreat or fight, where their payoffs are 0 or 10. Okay? And the Aztecs would rather have 10 than 0. The Spanish don't get to choose anymore. They're fighting no matter what. So we end up with this as our Nash equilibrium, where the Spanish are going to gain the land and the Aztecs are going to retreat.